Welcome to Cannabis School. I'm your host, Jesse Angeles.
And I'm Brandon Elder.
And we're here to talk to you about everything pertaining to cannabis, from vape,
Flower,
edibles,
strains,
and everything in between. So, if you're a racist, then you hate cannabis, apparently.
If you're racist, you hate cannabis.
Well, that's kind of how it all got started. This whole,
pretty much.
Yeah, being illegal. And in today's episode of the 101, we have been asked, why is cannabis illegal?
Yeah,
and,
like what happened in the first place?
Right. And there's a lot of different talking heads that will say, oh, it's because of religion or it's because of this or that. Like I
don't know if I've heard a religious push.
No, I'm hearing from like people. Like I asked for a lot of like random people.
Their thoughts.
Yeah, okay. I'm like, hey, what do you think? Why do you think it's illegal? Well, because Christians don't do that. This was like a non-LDS person I asked. And they go, well, Christians aren't supposed to do that. And I'm like, why not? And they go, well, it's illegal. So it always goes back to that. When somebody says something is just so, then it's illegal. It's bad for you, right? Like eggs. Have you ever seen that? There was this like What the Health documentary or mockumentary on Netflix, and they talk about how eggs are carcinogenic. It's just as much as cigarettes. Which is fucking weird.
That's what they said.
It's in there. And my niece at the time, she's like, Uncle Jesse, eggs are
you
bad.
Eat a lot of eggs, yeah.
You got to stop with the eggs because it's going to kill you.
You're going to die.
Yeah,
it's like cigarettes, bro.
The yolk, the cholesterol, and even that myth of that the egg yolk is so bad for you to this day. It's even to the point where I think something is completely criminal, and it goes into this: margarine and butter. Margarine is whipped oil.
Yeah, it's not even the same.
You're spreading it on there. Don't even get me started about a lot of the oils, but it's an inflammatory, and this is being promoted as a health product. So going into this started around the take us to it, man.
It's got a whole, I spent a lot of time doing some.
Same. And going back and forward, right? I mean, like, who got this going? Because it always starts with someone.
Well, it depends on where you look. A lot of people point the fingers at like William Randolph Hearst.
Right.
They point the fingers at Nixon. Pre-like 1900s. Cannabis has been used for thousands of years. It's been in like archaeological digs. It's been found in like ancient Egypt times. It's been known through Asia.
Of it.
Yeah, for thousands of years it's been known as a medication. And then in the 1880s, it was in most medications.
What flavor we got here?
This today is Tropicana cherries.
Oh,
yeah,
my favorite.
Look at those pretty purple colors, and
my favorite.
Figured it would be perfect for today.
Anyways, continue.
All right. So in the 1880s, it was actually just in like 80% of over-the-counter medications. And 1906, they actually started putting in regulations that made it so you had to label and put on the label that there was cannabis or whatever in there. It was the very first introduction to restrictions or regulations of any sort.
Do you know why that was?
Well, they didn't have any label on what was actually in there.
Oh,
so this was like a label of not necessarily you have to put the cannabis is in there, but it was like opium, any other like cocaine was used. There was all sorts of things that were used, opiates and that. So you had to basically label and go, this is what's in here.
So we're coming out of the Wild West, right?
Yes.
Because the death of the West, I mean, when people don't know like the history of the West, it was only like 30 years. It wasn't very long. It was a very short time, but it's so iconic. But during that time, you had opium being openly used called laudanum, right? And they had cannabis oil. The cannabis oils that they had then were so potent and strong because it was direct. Like, I mean, it was like a reddish oil, right?
So even back since the 1830s, there was Sir William Brooke O'Shaughnessy. O'Shaughnessy. And he was an Irish doctor studying in India.
O'Shaughnessy?
Yeah. So this was basically the origination of Anglo-Saxons or white people being introduced to cannabis.
Right.
And so he actually documented that cannabis extracts could ease cholera symptoms like stomach pain and vomiting. And by the late 19th century, Americans and Europeans could buy any of those at pharmacies and doctors' offices to help with stomach aches, migraines, inflammation, insomnia, and other ailments.
Wow.
Like that was just standard across the board.
Yeah.
In fact, like the American Medical Association even had it on their list of like medications until 1942, even though it started becoming illegal in 1937. It was a tax stamped act. And really what it was for you to have recreational or not medical cannabis, you had to have a stamp to say that you could have that. And the problem with that is the way the government put it in place was just so you had to have the cannabis present when you applied for that, because otherwise you would be applying for it and not having it there, which is fraudulent. So then they could throw you in prison for applying for a tax thing that you never did. But then that was around till the 60s when it was actually deemed unconstitutional. Like that's part of the Fifth Amendment. You are not...
Can't incriminate yourself.
You don't have to legally incriminate yourself.
Right.
There's no way that you would have to. So it was just a thing of like, hey, that's unconstitutional. So they got rid of that in 67 and 68. They brought in, or 60, let's go down. It might be 69 and 70. But basically they got rid of the next one and they brought in the Controlled Substances Act. And that, now it's not even a legal constitutional act because according to the 10th Amendment, any power that is not guaranteed or written in the Constitution is either held by the state or, and any time according to law that or is in, you can choose which one it is. So it's either the person or the state can choose what powers. So if it's not written down in the Constitution, whether it's a law or not, it's either controlled by the state or the person.
Okay.
So that means that they have no right to delegate according to the Constitution whether or not you can use cannabis, period. It is unconstitutional. Now, the act that they regulate and do everything under is commerce. So they introduced the Controlled Substances Act, which regulates everything under commerce. So it's not constitutional, it's just commerce-tutional.
Yeah.
And so they hold everyone accountable and throw people in prison and create this whole system around it. But back in the 30s or even back in the 20s, we had William Randolph Hearst, who was pushing out all of this propaganda, all of the racist propaganda, because back in 1910 was the Mexican War. And they had those people coming over. So then that's what surprised me was I thought it was a combination at the same time of blacks, Hispanics, and Asians. But it actually originated back in the 1910s from the Hispanics and going like, hey, they use marijuana or cannabis, but we're going to classify it as marijuana. And it's even spelled like MARIH according to like law still. It's all this stuff of like the legalities. And that's what they put in all this terrible propaganda that was pushed out by Randolph Hearst was like white people or like it makes black people think they're as good as white people. It makes like...
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's like women want to have sex with black men or Asian men or whatever if they smoke weed.
The white
it's
women
like,
are leaving for the BBC.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, how ignorant and terrified are you? Like, this is what they're perpetuating, but...
It's fear-based, and it's exactly that. And that's kind of why it went around that area over there saying that, cannabis being illegal started with being just a lot of racism towards that time. And racism necessarily wasn't even brought up as racism at the time. It's just the way it is. Mexicans were seen as lower class people. Blacks were seen as lower class people. And they would frequent because this is something that they could have, right? If you think about alcohol at the time, it wasn't so readily available. And on top of it, it was expensive.
Prohibition was in the 20s. So
Right,
that was
well,
also the introduction of like alcohol prohibition. And it was like cannabis got really big during alcohol prohibition when there was like not as much. But then obviously alcohol got massive too.
Well, yeah, but
there was all the alcohol runners. And
when you talk about the Mexican Revolution, you know what that is? It's not the American-Mexican War. That was much earlier than that time. So when you're talking about this, it's a particular time. This is going towards their more individualized freedom, right? The Mexican Revolution, which funny enough is I have a relative, an ancestor who actually fought alongside Pancho Villa for the freedom of Mexico.
Yeah.
And they have an airport named after him.
That's interesting.
It's
That's
cool.
super cool.
I didn't learn that until later on. My dad was down there. He's like, you actually have a relative who was, he was like a brigadier general. and broke away from them and joined up. But going back into, well, a lot of cultures everywhere were using this anyways.
Yes.
A lot. And
historically, they have.
Well, but it was just super common. Tobacco is not as common as cannabis is. When they talk about a lot of that, where, how tobacco got over to Europe was from Native Americans. They would bring them over there and they're like, yeah, we'll leave, but we have to bring this with us and we're going to plant it over there too. And thus it exploded. But cannabis had been there forever.
Yeah. Well, and it's been a medicine forever. So the Controlled Substance Act, basically what it claimed is like, it put it in a Schedule 1.
Yeah.
Which is where it remains today. The introduction of the Controlled Substance Acts, basically Schedule 1 is the substance has a high potential for abuse. The substance has no currently accepted medical use in treatment in the United States, and there's a lack of accepted safety for the use of drug under medical supervision. Now, that's what they say for cannabis. Yet the compound THC, the most psychoactive chemical that they claim within cannabis exists, that one is a Schedule 3. Because they have a pill, which is or they have a medication on the market called Marinol, which is just synthesized THC. Because they think, the government claims that the one compound, the synthesized compound, is safer than the 300 plus compounds that are combined in the naturally occurring cannabis plant.
Yeah.
When that's safer. But yet the side effects are worse.
Yeah. Straight THC is not fun.
But yet in that moment, they're still claiming that there's medical benefit. So there is a medical value in the United States for Marinol. That is a medication. So that is cannabis derived, like it is a synthesized cannabinoid. But they're claiming that there's medical value. They have the same thing for CBD. So they have two products on the market medically proven that there's medical value according to the FDA and everything that put it out there. But yet they're claiming that there's still no medical value in this plant that it originates from.
So why is it still legal today?
Illegal? Money? Business? Politics?
That's a pretty easy way, but I mean, like, what are the other, what's the evidence of that?
Well, so even looking back at 1944,
okay,
Nixon was around and Harry Anslinger was around. And Nixon went to them and he's like, hey, I want you guys to go and find all of this information proving that cannabis is a terrible drug.
1964?
1944. It's called the LaGuardia Committee Report from the New York Academy of Medicine.
Was he a senator at the time?
The LaGuardia? Or
Nixon.
Then he was senator.
Okay.
So in that time, the committee found that marijuana was not physically addictive, not a gateway drug, and that it did not lead to crime. But Harry Anslinger, head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, labeled the report unscientific, and prohibition kept going. And then every 10 years almost since then, there's another governing body that will review that data and find the same things. Find that it's not a gateway drug. Find that it's not all of these things, that they're still holding it in.
So this is the precursor to the DEA, correct?
Yes. Yeah, was the Federal Bureau of Narcotics.
Yeah, that sounds just as, that guy sounds just as crooked as that fucker
It was the same
Hoover.
as Nixon. Because when it went down even further, there's the Schaefer Commission in 1972 that they found it was at least as safe as alcohol and actually recommended to Nixon ending the federal prohibition in favor of public health. But then the Federal Bureau of Narcotics had been removed and it emerged as into the Department of Justice, where Nixon's ally, John Mitchell, placed cannabis in Schedule 1 in 1972. So
that's where I'm confused because, I get the political part, but the money part, not so much.
Right now, it's all pharma-based. Right now, you think of pharmaceutical companies are the ones that have Marinol and they have the CBD version out there. Those are the only two products on the market that are federally recognized as medicine. So the only ones that can legally make money, and they're not taxed on the way any other cannabis business is taxed. They're taxed like a normal business.
But I can't see that making enough money for them to be able to fight against that because it doesn't make any sense. What I'm saying is, if you have a drug and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not siding with it, but I'm saying you've got a drug that is known to be able to help out with pain management, right? So let's take Oxycontin, and even though it's put out there, they make billions upon billions of dollars.
Yes,
like almost like a sheik. Like
Well,
you don't know how much money.
But how many people, when you get prescribed Oxycontin or any real painkillers, how many of those are short-term treatments?
Oh yeah, they're all short-term treatments. No, but I'm saying like I'm not saying that. I'm saying about the medical problem. I'm not saying like I get that there. If I created something that could be just as effective on pain management with no side effects, using no derivatives of opium to do that, I would see why Big Pharma would be like, we got to kill that motherfucker.
Yeah.
Right. But then if I take cannabis with these two other products that are minors and used very infrequently, I would imagine.
I don't know. I'm not actually sure because I haven't done too much digging into like what the market is on Marinol or the CBD version.
But I'm saying it's not a big enough market. I mean, if you look at the pain management market, it's a multi-trillion-dollar market.
Oh, yeah. But
right?
That one is mostly managed by medications that...
Right. And then but that's the same thing, though. I mean, I know that those work, but the side effect is so severe, even death, right?
Yeah.
Cannabis, can it help with pain? It can. Can it get rid of pain on that level? I don't think so.
It can, depending on your dose, on the cannabinoids, on...
But that also depends upon your
whether-
endocannabinoid system.
Yeah. And like what type of pain it is, how you're addressing it. Like,
Right.
there's many things that address that. Just the same as like, Lortab's not guaranteed that it'll get rid of my pain.
No. But
Just
I mean,
the same way.
But it's just a dulling sense. And that's why the money part, I get, but I don't get. I get more of the perception. Really, is there this big agenda from Big Pharma to cut down cannabis? Like, I don't know.
I think it restricts it until they're allowed to get in it. I don't think it's to keep it from ever happening. I think it's to like
I don't see
get
Big
more...
Pharma. I see Big Tobacco being more of that because they have an actual, because they've lost so much. They've lost
but that's
billions.
another person.
Right.
So it's still a
but
money agenda.
No, it totally is a money agenda. But
Like you said, tobacco. There's all these players who are in it. It's not just pharma. But it's not admitting or going, well, it's not. Like, yeah, there are players in there. We can't be that ignorant to go, they're not influencing some way or the other.
I just don't see it as a majority. I see it as a minority. I see that
pharma as a minority?
Absolutely against cannabis. Because the reason why is because they already have they make trillions of dollars. This isn't going to disrupt them in anytime soon. And the reason why is because laws don't change.
Yeah, because there's no law change.
Yeah, but the laws only change based upon open perception. The reason why I say it is that the LDS Church was totally against cannabis, has paid to get lobbying against it. The only reason why it changed was that the dominant over 70% of Utahns said we want it.
Yeah.
And so they go, okay, fine.
Because the ballot initiative passed, but then it's like...
But why was it for them? It wasn't for money. No. It was the perception that it was bad.
But then it's also, hey, we don't have control of this because this has gotten pushed through anyway. This is what the people want. But we don't have control in here. We need... And it wasn't the perfect system, honestly.
No.
But like where it's at now, what do you see being the biggest contributors to it still remaining illegal?
I honestly think it's because of the perception, not just of religious context, but just the perception of who people were. If you go back in time...
Do you think religion plays a big part in that?
I think it does have a part in keeping it illegal.
Okay. A part.
Part.
I was like, I don't feel like it would be I haven't felt like religion's played a massive role
No. I mean, I'll take it, for the church I'm a part of. They spent a lot of money going against cannabis.
Here especially.
Yeah, here especially. And anywhere else they tried to go legal. Right.
Necessarily.
But the reason why they changed it was because, everybody wanted it. And I see that's the reason why we're starting to see more and more states become legal or in a medical state. Do I agree with how Utah is set up? I think it sucks that we only have a handful of dispensaries, literally. And the growers are limited.
Well, and we have tons of growers too. But when we went down with Nerith even, and from Dragonfly, and we had that discussion about okay, this is a medical program, and they're saying their intent is to help patients. But how many places do we actually have pharmacies?
Yeah.
They're all just in the main densely populated areas. However, if you go off of those main densely populated areas, you have to go hours and hours and hours to get to some of these small cities, some of these other places and that. And you're like, there is nothing for any of these people with these these issues.
So it really doesn't help.
But they can't grow it either because legally they don't allow you to do it medicine, like to grow your own medicine, even if you live really far out. So it's like there are imperfect programs everywhere.
Right, but the legalization part, the way I think it's still illegal is because the perception is still bad. Like you should trust the FBI and CIA. Like the perception is you should trust them because they're good, but we've learned that they have done lots of really crooked things to hurt us as U.S. citizens. Yeah. But when we talk about like cannabis, it's like it just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense on the illegality.
Yeah, I don't either because
they'll say like textiles, like, oh, they would make paper out of them. Like, I'm not.
It was, like there's all sorts of stuff. Like in the 40s, 1944 or World War II time, Japan cut off our supply of fibers for hemp.
Yeah.
So it was like they sent out hemp seeds to all of our farmers across the U.S. going, please grow this. That was a request from our government. But yet we've done all this stuff all the time. And I see all of these people, like there's data from all of these years about back in even 1971, Nixon had they came to him with the Schaefer Commission.
Yeah.
And they had these reports about it's not dangerous. We should decriminalize it. And he basically said, can I get that out of this son of a bitch in domestic council? I mean, one on marijuana that just tears the ass out of him. Because all he wanted, it didn't matter. They wanted to arrest the leaders of the black people, of the minorities, of the Hispanic families. They wanted to disrupt those communities, arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. It said, did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. And that was a direct quote from, was it Nixon or Anslinger?
I think it was Anslinger.
No, it was actually Nixon's aide, John L. Rickman. So...
Well, and it just goes to where the perception was, African Americans, it says in this thing over here in the Britannica, according to some studies, African Americans in the early 21st century were nearly 4 times more likely than whites to be arrested with marijuana. And it's the perception of racism, and that's why racism was beneath. It was not seen as good as. And so it was this, what was the other one?
Maybe you can help me understand this.
Okay.
Because I think about this a little bit here and there when I think about cannabis and all of the information and education that has been provided to the United States government, political officials, everything over the years. It still exists. None of that data has disappeared. So when we look at it, and every time this has been approached, every time it hits the Senate, it hits the House, everything like that, do the people just not read the data that has been out there? What is the discussion that happens that there's no understanding of the scientific data that we have and that's been out there? Because a basic understanding of a medicine, there should be no more it's a Schedule 1. There should be no more this. It shouldn't be hey, well, we don't know what to do. It should be, I'm sorry, the data's here. It can't be classified as this.
Yeah.
Schedule 1 can't work because we have medical value. So it's not you need to reschedule or do this. You need to address this now because you're throwing people in for something that is false.
Right. And I think that goes back all the way back to Anslinger because it's perceived as bad and I perceive it as bad, so it will be bad, right? Including, remember, they came back to him going, okay, well, here's the scientific report. It goes, I don't see that report as valid. I'm going to make my own scientific report and I'll have my people approve it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's still illegal because of that perception, because we still have old individuals that are in the Senate and the Congress, because it's not, a president doesn't have the law to flick his pen and make it so.
No, I just mean as a human, how are you that, not you, but
no, yeah, but
the House, Senate, or whoever is seeing that data and information, how are you that ignorant?
Well, because of the ignorance, it's the perception before, it's the perception instead of the perspective.
But it's like science. If something came out and there was new information, wouldn't they have to look at it and try and at least consider it?
Yeah, but there's people that have such strong beliefs, like flat earthers, yes. Right? And I'm not hating on flat earth. If you're a flat earther, cool, that's awesome. But there
would
will
love
be
to hear your ideas, or because I
serious,
have no idea.
right? There's the ice wall like they have in Game of Thrones. Dude,
Oh, okay. You're
the
like
whole thing, like
okay.
about some of the beliefs as. But again, the belief is so strong that the fear is induced and that nobody moves forward with it. It takes something monumental. And I think that's where the stage we are right now is monumental, because now what we're doing is we're moving more into open conversations about cannabis, not as a bad thing, but how many different types of amazing things are in this plant that are helping us every single day and that we feel better with. And like, now, like, I'm feeling like incredibly antsy right now, and a tenseness in my jaw, and I feel anxious in a different way, more the mind than in the body and the heart. I don't feel anything here. So that's why, earlier, I was contributing to, I was like, what's going on? But because it's not a conversation I normally have like that. So apologies.
Same.
Yeah. No. We're good. We're good. But when you go into it, like it goes back to something that was said in here. It has negative effects on these degenerate races.
Yeah.
And what was another thing? You had said it earlier, where they think they're as good as whites.
It makes black people think they're as good as white people, basically.
Yeah, it was just like the xenophobia, which I love the word xenophobia because it always reminds me of aliens, right? Xenomorphs. But
no, it's horrible though.
Well, because of that, reefers makes darkies think that they're as good as white men.
Yeah.
Like just that statement alone.
Most of the attacks upon the white women of the South are directly a result of cocaine-crazed Negro brain.
Yeah, seriously. But again, why was the perception there that they were lesser than?
Yeah.
It comes back
from
from
us and a them.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what happened. That's why there should be term limits for these people.
Yes,
the
100%.
president can only serve 8 years. Good, especially if they're really bad. If they get elected again, like, what are you doing to yourself? But yet again, senators and congressmen are the ones who are passing these laws.
Yeah.
They are the ones who are getting their palms greased by those entities that are saying, hey.
By whatever entity is greasing them.
But if that entity truly believes that it's bad, not just for their business, because you think about it, like cannabis is in like $60 billion industry, $80 billion industry. It's going to get even bigger.
Oh, yeah.
But comparatively to a lot of these other companies, they're a minor player. And so it doesn't make sense. Like the entirety of, Elon Musk owns, if we were to put it in a percentage over there, Elon Musk would have most of all the profits of cannabis fits within his portfolio of how much money he has.
Probably.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh yeah, I have that in my savings account. Right? And that's the entire market.
My Venmo.
Right? That's my Venmo. I Venmo that often. But I can't do a South African accent like he does. But when you just think about it, like it's infuriating to me that the laws still stay, and the reason why is because of these. Like you take that, like why I brought up the church. The church is a lot like that, where it's like if we say sure, if we don't say sure, it's not the majority, it's the minority.
Yeah.
But that's in any organization, right? That's why we have a president or kings or queens or whatever. We don't want to take that responsibility, but when that responsibility lies upon you, and you're only making that decision because, well, my parents said it was bad, so it's bad.
Yeah.
Right? Honestly, that's where I feel.
I just go to, my mind when you said that goes to like Waterboy and Adam Sandler, where he's like, oh, Mama said like the gators come from here or something. I'm like, oh my God, how dumb are you? Because sometimes that's what it sounds like.
It does.
And I'm like, okay. And it's not to blame the person. It's to go, hey, maybe you haven't been introduced to the information. And like,
but sometimes, sometimes they're blind to it. It's just like going back to Anslinger. I don't believe your data. Your data is false.
But that's when it's like, okay, but this isn't my data. This is scientists' data from hundreds of years, from tons of different places, not just one. This is this university, this country. This has been funded by the U.S. here. This is not my data.
Right.
This is data from a million different sources that all have at least the same basis.
When I'm saying your data, I mean, it's
their approach. Yeah,
it's their approach of saying like, well, who cares? Like, did they grow up in my hometown?
But where
did they know my mama?
Where is their data that this person's supporting the other? Because it's like, okay, well, if you're saying this data doesn't support it, I want to see your data that you're pulling your information from or your bias from.
And that's why I think we're at this next precipice of legalization there, because honestly, like the biggest worries I have with legalization is the quality of product. It's going to go
always
way down.
It needs to be a standard of regulation, kind of like alcohol.
Right.
Hey, I'm sorry, we can't have half-assed beers being out there or alcohols that are going to make people go blind or deaf or like cause death.
All the stuff we heard about in the
aside
prohibition.
from normal death because you drink too much. Like all of the things that you look at, like you said in prohibition. Okay, well, how do you get that standard of regulation across the board for cannabis? Because that's all you need is a good regulation to go, we want to make sure people are safe. We recognize there's medical values because we're not stupid. We can read. And that's what I think it needs to be, is going, hey, if you're making the decision to say that you're choosing this to be illegal, I need you to prove your supported data that you're basing this on. And if you can't, you need to get off the pot.
Yeah, but it's a hard thing because these, once upon a time, there are these jobs that as Congress and senators, they weren't making crazy money. Now they make crazy money of a lot of insider trading, of course.
Yeah.
But the ones who aren't doing really well, they're good people, but they're not going to be there long. The whole purpose of these politicians is to get reelected. Yeah, they're not there to serve you. They may have some good intentions at first. I'm not going to say they don't.
Because usually I feel like when they get in there, they're thinking they're going in for the people. And when they get in and work for the organization, they're working for the organization.
Yeah, and in order for you to continue to make the living that you are, to continue fighting the fight that you one day will fight, which you'll never come, then you just are in this circle of chasing your own tail. It's a snake eating its own tail. It's just constant. It doesn't stop. And that's where I think with the legalization, or at least changing the definition of it. Like I'm still like, we talked about it.
Reschedule versus deschedule, yeah.
Yeah, like I think they're both a pipe dream at this moment. And I don't know if it would, they'll go, oh, if they did that, like so-and-so would get like way more votes. Not really. I don't know anybody who's going to the ballot going, well, because he's going to make marijuana legal, I'll vote for him.
Because that's never happened.
He can't do it.
Every president has been like, oh, yeah, this will happen. I'm going to do this. I support marijuana.
Right.
And then they get in. And like I said, they can't do it.
Well,
nothing happens. It has to go through all of these other idiots in the House and the Senate to vote it when they're like, I don't understand this. Marijuana scares me, okay?
Yeah, but the thing, it comes out now, it's why is it legal in certain states and not in others? And that's where the loophole that you were talking about, because it's unconstitutional. So they have to be able to figure out loopholes in the law in order for it to happen. Which one was the first state? California being able to come out first.
1996 was the first medical program.
But I mean, you think back all the way to then. Right? That was a year before I graduated high school. And that was a long time ago. That feels like a long time ago, but it was such a short span. And within just the last 5 years, we've seen tremendous growth. So that's where I think that this is going to perpetually change. If more states are able to come online and being able to sell direct, either in a medical or a rec, whatever they're doing, that's fine. But once that starts being able to be across the board where no more of the states can say, well, you know what, we can't do it. Why not? Because there's no reason why you can't. Like Idaho, there is no reason why. And you would think Utah would be more staunch than they would, but they are so staunch.
Same. Right now, so as of March 2024, there are 24 states in the United States that have legalized recreational cannabis. And then... So still, it's illegal in Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, Iowa, Indiana, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Now, they might have some hemp or cannabis, like a really low, weird Delta 8 laws or things they allow, but...
Dude, you know what's really funny is... I'm looking at this map and it shows when it says legal for adult use, illegal possession, small amounts, conditional, decriminalized. It still has Utah is illegal.
Interesting.
And it's a 2024 one, which is funny because it is legal here.
Yeah.
And that's just silly. But I mean, just seeing like you can actually see the whole Bible Belt is a lot of that. It's just, and again,
I was
that
like
goes
Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and I was like, yeah,
Oklahoma's
Iowa,
now. It even says Oklahoma is
Indiana.
illegal.
I think. Oh, did I not write Oklahoma?
No,
no, Oklahoma's legal.
Yeah,
Kentucky,
I know.
Kentucky,
So this
I
is
thought
a
it
weird
was.
one. Like I don't understand where
Kentucky.
this came from, but that's funny. You know, throughout the Bible Belt, though, exactly, it's where it's like Florida hangs out on its own. Like it's really strange, and New York is fairly new.
They're a couple of years.
Yeah, and so and we've been 4 years?
I thought it was 2019, 2018 maybe 2019 when it passed, and then 2020 when it went into effect.
Yeah, so we're about 4 years.
Yeah.
Almost 4 years. We're coming up on 4 years. That's, and everybody was using even during that time. I would love to be able to say that cannabis will be legalized during our lifetime or within the next, I mean, not the lifetime. I'm making it sound like it's some astronomical event. I don't think we'll see it like within a short period of time. 5 years, I don't know. It keeps being pushed back.
I'm thinking of like how long till the people in there are dead? Like the old people, is it 10 years?
Dude.
Like is it 5-10 years before a lot of those old people are dead?
Look at him. Dude, like one of the, I don't even remember his name, but they were asking him questions and he was just staring off and he couldn't answer. And I was thinking, get that poor son of a bitch out of there.
Yeah.
But the thing is it's just weird. It's just weird. And it's those individuals that have maintained, like I joked around, remember when we were on the ride and I said, the only reason why we have legal cannabis in Utah is because Orrin Hatch is dead.
Yeah.
Orrin Hatch was like hardcore drug czar type of guy. I mean, you know, the saddest thing you see is when somebody gets busted with a pen or two back in the day. Dude, they're big, they have a huge fine.
So my buddy, he got pulled over because he worked for Vivint and he would go out every summer and go do installs. And he got a ticket right before he went out for the summer. And when he came back, apparently he'd forgotten to pay it and he had a warrant for an unpaid ticket. So now he's going down longboarding by the lake and just drives past a sheriff. Now, of course, legally they're supposed to have reasonable suspicion or something to actually run your plates. He just ran it anyway.
Reasonable cause, yeah.
And then he pulled him out, like, so he's stopped because he's getting out his longboard now. Sheriff pulls up behind him, arrests him because apparently he has a warrant, and then starts searching him, and he's got a pen on him.
Oh.
This was pre-program here in Utah. There's no medical program. He got a DWI, even though he wasn't in the car when the cop stopped him. He wasn't even in the driver's seat. It could have been the other guy that was driving. But because, you know, he stopped him and pulled him out, like did all that, then he had a year of drug testing to do. He had to go take a bunch of classes, all of this shit for a pen.
Yeah. But that's sad.
Like, people go to jail for that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, like I don't know anybody personally in Idaho. If we got Idaho listeners, you guys could tell us. But you know, people getting busted over there for cannabis, it's still a big deal in that state.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. But yeah, I mean, every time I go up, I bring a pen or a vaporizer or something, and I'm sitting out back and I'm puffing out. I'm like, man, I wonder what these people here think when they smell this kind of stuff. Do they just have like a massive heart attack? And I'm actually pretty chill in that moment. Like I'm not stressed. I'm not worried. Am I going to get busted? I'm just like, I'm sitting there going, man, I'd hate to live here. I'd hate to have the stress of like these people who live out here and are constantly worried or fearful. And I'm sorry for you guys who are in that, like all around the world, because there's tons of people who have that. Like, hey, it's illegal or or it's really illegal. Like some places you'll get a slap on the wrist. You get a $25, $50 fine, whatever it is, you go on your way. Other places you're getting arrested for, you're going to jail for. Like it's really fucking up your entire life. And that's what I hate. And it sucks that it's global, but even in our United States, I hate that we have a federal regulation that goes, hey, this medicine that we have, like, we hold a medical patent for.
Right.
That we have, like, proof over tons and tons of years of medical benefits we're going to throw people in prison for. Like, where do you feel good? How is there any right or justice done in that moment at all?
Well, and it goes back to what we had said during the deschedule, reschedule. The one big step I would like to see done, before legalization is releasing of all those
people who are in
individual who are in prison right now serving for cannabis-related crimes, not drug-related crimes. It was
not violence,
yeah,
just
any
cannabis.
violence, just cannabis. They're moving weight,
or they were just smoking a joint.
Yeah,
or
like California used to have. I don't know if they still do have the 3 strikes law. It didn't matter what crimes you committed. If you had like a felony or something like that, and you committed any other crimes after it 3 times, then you go to prison for 25.
Jeez.
Like, you want to talk about if there's somebody, you know what? I would go on to that one. This conspiracy theory time. I would think that the corrections prison system would have more to do with keeping cannabis illegal.
Well, you know where that's filled from? The police and the judicial system. So it very well could be a combination of the 3 of them.
Well, there are a lot of prisons now that are privatized. These are owned by corporations.
Yeah.
And they work in cahoots with...
They have contracts with the people to keep their businesses filled.
Exactly. And so why not continue to perpetuate an idea that it's still bad? We need to be able to... Because if you think about it, we have more prisons than anywhere else in the world.
More incarcerated per capita than any country in the entire world. And so since the 1980s, our prison system have filled 56%.
Fuck.
Or it's no. It jumped from, what was it? I don't remember. The numbers...
Please do know that these numbers can be skewed because we have cannabis.
The numbers were astronomical. It jumped from I think it was 40,000 pre-80s to some astronomical number. And it was so you're telling me that the amount of criminal people has jumped that much in 10 years. But then you look at it, and that's where the data was. The 56% was the amount of people in prison for cannabis. So the amount, so you're looking at it going, cool, well, our numbers have jumped astronomical, but how many of those people are in just for cannabis? Well, if it's 56%, that's over half the people in prison are there just for cannabis.
Yeah.
And this was a FBI statistic. This was pulled from FBI data.
Such bullshit.
And it's okay, so you're telling me that our nation, who's the freest country, who has all this shit, you really just... So what is it? Your school system? Your religious system? Your parenting structure system? What is it that raises fucktards then? Because that's what you're telling us we all are.
A lot of it's just that perpetual fear, and then there's money being made from that fear. And, it doesn't necessarily come from this idea that we've got to make a lot of money. We got to control these people. And the more that you have a substance such as cannabis into your system, maybe you're going to question that a little more. That goes back to Napoleon, why he didn't want his troops hanging out with the Egyptian troops. Yeah, because they were smoking cannabis, and they're just they didn't want to fight
these. We don't want to go kill these people. We
don't want to do any of this shit. Yeah, exactly. What are we doing with our lives? It really slows things down to that perspective where you can go, look, I need to take a step back. So when looking at these, the way it moves, and this is just a belief I have. And again, take these things with, this is a perspective of ours. Brandon has his perspective, I have my perspective, you have your perspective. And that's ultimately why it's where it's at. It's perspective that you're able to start seeing states legalize. After that, it's perspective of that state going, okay. It's the perspective of the church that I belong to finally that said, you know what, we can't decide this because everybody wants it. So we have to take a step aside. Even though they didn't want to, they did it anyways.
Yeah.
And it's because of the majority. It's because of people of us. The more of us that demand it, that ask for it. If you put up, how many times has this bill gone up since 2016?
Which one?
To get legalized here in Utah? And it was
I have no idea.
It was constant.
Started, but
it was out of my city. He was the representative, a congressman or a senator for this state, the state U.S.
The one you lived before or now?
The one where I live now.
Oh, okay.
Out in Saratoga. They tried to pass it and they got shut down. He tried to pass it again, it got shut down. That's when Vickers came in, and then because he was able to negotiate some deal with that side. and to get them to be okay with it. I mean, ultimately, if it wasn't able to pass, it was because of a larger entity in the state. 60% of Utahns are LDS. So it goes the same with every state. Like, what is the ideology there? And if the majority, if a state like Utah, that's why I love where we're at, is if a state like Utah can get legalized,
you guys can too.
Why can't Idaho?
Why can't
Texas?
Yeah, that's what's boggled my mind. My ex has always asked me, she's like, oh, you should move to Texas because she'll move all around the country.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, I could chase you everywhere you go. That sounds like
Be
fun.
like a touring band.
Yeah. Oh, groupies.
But, where is it legal?
But yeah, and she's like, well, you should move to Texas. And I'm like, there's still massive legality issues with cannabis in Texas. And I was like, it's surprising because I feel like you guys aren't as ignorant as people here, but yet you're proving otherwise. So,
well, it's the perception. I mean, it is in the Bible Belt, and the perception is that God says this is bad, but nowhere is it
show me
written.
in your Bible, because it shows me, according to the Bible, that the plants and that from the earth are from God, and that's designed for you. So tell me which part of that tells you that God didn't create that for you, if that's what you believe.
And that's perception versus perspective, because the perception is whatever they create. It's the same people that think that dinosaurs weren't real.
Yeah.
Right? And they go, but we have bones. And they go, yeah, those are fake. Who put them there? Satan did. Okay.
Aliens.
You lost me there.
Yep.
Like, I believe aliens helped build megalithic structures before I believe that.
Well, but that seems more realistic when you look at how they're designed and built and that.
Right.
And we can't replicate shit to this day. So you're like,
so again,
okay, cool. Who knows?
That's where I'm like, you know what? You want to be able to have this. You want it legal in your state. You got to start getting it out there. Even in Germany, like, they tried to go full legalization, but because it's part of the EU, they couldn't. So they gave them another alternative, and they were able to grow their own plants over there. Like, we got Rico over there, right? Rico, you listening to this, bro? Thanks for that email. But it's cool to hear about that. Like, they were able to change it. And the reason why they were able to change it, they were following what the U.S. did. Everywhere did that. They started to make it criminal.
Yeah.
Like, even in Southeast Asia.
It wasn't criminalized. And it's like, all right, cool. Well, the Americans did it, so let's follow suit. And I'm sorry for you guys who followed suit, because now you guys are stuck with us, and it's just...
But I understand that. After World War II, I mean, dude.
Yeah.
That's when we came up. That's where everybody was like, whoa, these guys are here. And it was super easy to fall in line with whatever Americans like, we should like too. And unfortunately, you had these very superstitious, very fear-based individuals.
I mean, they just came out of...
But they were a product of their upbringing, and that's what makes me happy about the younger generations, because they're learning more about this. Dude, when my kids are adult, I think that's when it's going to be completely legalized. I think you're going to be able to find this.
I hope before then, but it also wouldn't surprise me if it took a long time because of how many people are still in seats.
Exactly. I mean, it's like us, dude. You know what? If we became senators one day, if we became congressmen one day, then we're able to push that, right? I'm not suggesting that. I want to step in that tool, but I said tool. I was thinking pool, cannabis, but it's exactly that, dude. We start seeing these younger people start demanding it. That's what moved it here, man.
But that's what I wonder is, like, okay, where you're at, and it's not just the demanding, it's also the education side. I think it's what's changing is, like, when people like my parents here have used cannabis, when you start seeing, because I feel like my parents are pretty dogmatic, like, conservative people.
Extremely conservative,
like,
yeah.
And I love them to death. They are my parents.
Yeah.
Like, that's who they are. But I look at it and I go, okay, well, how many other mindsets like that are out there? But how long did it take? And honestly, like, I don't know what that driving factor, like how you have that conversation for someone who's, it's their perception because they've seen the data, they've seen whatever, and they're like, well, I don't.
Still.
How do you change that to actually affect change in that moment? Because I mean, you can't force anyone to have a different mindset.
I think a lot of it has to come with your attitude with it. So if we're really open with everybody we meet, and there's not one person I won't talk to about cannabis. And I want them to break that stereotype that I'm just a loser or like the perceptions of before, because, you know, I'm half Hispanic, so I'm naturally drawn to it because that's what my ancestors liked, you know, because we're a bunch of deviants. Like that's the perception to them is it's like, oh, well, you know, it's like the joke around we talk about, like, it's okay, I have a podcast. So people just let you do
They're
whatever.
like, wait, what? Yeah, that's cool. I have a podcast.
But again, that is another thing that makes us a little bit more unique on that side, because we can say that. Like, yeah, I talk about this every week. Every week I talk about this. And the reason why it's not because I'm making money from it. You're making money from it. We're not making money from this. Let's just not let anybody get twisted. You're at this point, they're probably high rollers. Look at our cars.
Look at these fucking Crocs.
Yeah, dude. He's rocking
laced.
Crocs.
Mm-hmm.
But you think about it, like, you know, when we start opening up like these conversations that we've been having for years and that everybody else has been along for years now.
Yeah.
We know that the more you're able to talk about this openly and the more you stop giving a shit about what other people think about what you're doing, and matter of fact, making it more just mainstream, that's how you get people interested.
That's normalizing it.
Yeah. I get people interested there who are involved in the church. I am so open about it. My neighbor, who is the nicest guy in the world, he's like, I would like to listen to that sometime. And I'm like, I don't think you would like that.
Right.
And he goes, why not? I said, it's explicit.
Well, it's like,
I'm
right?
so
even
Navy.
the neighbor next door, he is, I'd guess 70s.
Yeah.
70 years old. He is a temple worker. So for people who don't know what that is, that's in the LDS religion. That's like someone who I feel like is really spiritual. They spend a lot of time invested in the religion, not because it's required, but because
they have a passion for it.
Yeah, and a love. Like they feel like they're out helping, doing
Great.
good for their church.
Yeah.
And that's good for them.
Way cool.
And that's what he does with his time. However, he's also been a medical cannabis consumer in Utah for a decade.
Yeah.
For cancer. Like, and so he has this understanding and just, but I see him as like this old, nice, kind, like soft, not this person that I would see listening to the show. Yet he tunes in. He listens to our show and he's like, hey, I caught the episode. I really liked, and I was like,
you know what? There you go.
But it speaks to me because I'm like, and I think about it sometimes because I'll say a curse word and I'm like, man, like, I hope I didn't turn someone off. But
just
like,
words.
It is, but like, it's because the message and the impact that it could have and the understanding is like, it's so immense of the value that it could have on maybe not their life, but their family member's life or their friend's life. If they're not going to choose to use that, that's okay. That's up to them. Like, but I think that everyone should try and try different types. Maybe it's CBD, CBN, like there's all these different ways to
get involved.
Yeah. And find value in improving your quality of life. You don't have to get high.
Well, and that's the thing too. I want them to be. You know,
I love that experience.
I do. I absolutely love the experience, and that's why it's really, really difficult. That's why I got more passionate about it earlier, because I'm like, you know, I've been really pondering this, Brandon, before we had this episode of just like, why do I think it's illegal? Why do I think it's illegal?
Okay.
Not necessarily the evidence it's shown to me.
See, I haven't looked into why I feel like me as a person, why I would think it would be.
This was a high moment for me because I was really like, you know, when we brought that up, we're like, this would be a great topic. And because our
audience.
Yeah, our audience, it's just like, hey, can you talk about this? And it's like, oh, that's such a good one. And we really haven't dived into it, but we've dived into it with proof, because it's really easy to be able to show, well, this is historically, right, in a lineage, this is what we know. This is why it is the way it is. And before that, it was just like nobody cared. It was just there.
It was just a plant. It was just medicine.
Right? You're just like, oh, yeah, we take that.
I've never heard of any crusades going after like cannabis in the history.
Before. No, just like, oh, we got to take it down. Like, you know, like the Spartans are like, yeah, we got to fight against this whole scourge of this plant that makes people feel calm. Like it really, that's the part that I started to think about. I'm like, the biggest reason is because you think it's bad. And that's why, and enough of you fuckers thinking it's bad makes it bad. And it compounds it, becomes true. Like, you know, Bruce Lee, for me, was more of a philosopher than a martial artist.
Okay.
Because his thoughts were deeper than it. But, you know, he said, you know, when you have an idea and it's a good idea, it starts out great. And then the idea becomes, you know, gospel. and then gospel becomes the doctrine truth, and then it becomes dogma.
Yeah.
And when it reaches dogma level, you have to have this massive, just like all those people have to die. It's like, if you want this earth to be back to the way it was, pray for an asteroid.
Yeah. A global reset.
Yeah, 100, reset everything, and you won't have to worry about it. And hundreds, if not thousands of years into the future, then it will resemble somewhat of society that looks like this now. Like you think it's like, no, we'll get back in a couple months. Good luck. It's generations upon generations, right?
There was this TV show. It's called like The Third Body System, and it goes into, it's fucking interesting. You'd like it. But it goes into like this entity or other civilization that is out in space somewhere. They live on this other planet. And then that planet, there's 3 different suns.
Okay.
And so gravitational pulls are different.
Yeah.
Heat is different at certain moments. Like, so every time there's a cataclysm on this planet, it basically wipes humanity to square one again, starting over. And so they're finally, like, they've gone through so many iterations of this over time, and they're like struggled. And finally they got off their planet. They're heading through space to try and come to us. But they don't understand so much. And they see even just a story. A story was written, and they understood the story to be a lie because it wasn't true.
Yeah.
So they're like, wait, so you lie? Why do you lie? And it's all this basis, but then it was like incredible just to like think of that third-bodied system. This is definitely high cannabis talk.
This is good. Keep going, because this keep
like
going.
It's just really interesting to see, because they go into like every time it reset, it took, you're like, oh yeah, we'd get back to here by this time. No, it took them forever to get back to this stage, and then to get to that stage, because they're like, well, how long did it take you to get from caveman to like farming? Okay, it was hundreds of thousands of years. Okay, well, how long did it take you to get from farming to this stage? Well, it was 40,000 years. Okay, well, how long did it take you to get from computer age to this? 50 years. Okay, well, how long did it take you to get from here to here? And it was like, so in the 400 years of light speed that it takes for us to get from where we're at to you, we're not going to be developing any new technology. You are going to be continuing to be developing technologies over these 400 years. So while we're traveling, when we arrive to you, well, before when we headed, we thought it was safe, but now we don't trust you because you lie. What other things do you do? So they look at it and I'm like, oh man, that's like, it was just really incredible. But that whole thing of like, how long would it take civilization to come back after a major like cataclysm?
And that's the thing. You think about the cataclysm and you put it into the context of what we're talking about right now. You have to have a massive reset. That's why term limits are terrifying to these individuals, because it's not the money they make.
What would they do?
But it's the power they control,
yeah.
or the perception of power, because it's the same thing as the value of a dollar. Because I say it's this value and you say it's valuable, then it is so. So it is make-believe. The entire time we just play make-believe with each other.
Gotta love this fiat system based on nothing.
Fun, right? I mean, literally, cool. You create something out of nothing.
It's literally a monopoly.
That's why money isn't real. To me, it's not real. It's just, it's a fictitious thing. And so it's like, whatever. You want some? We can find ways to get it.
Yeah, it's there.
It's real in some sense. So it's the same thing like when we talk about the changing the idea of cannabis. In the laws of perspective, you need to have a demand. It was proven in our state, and I say that fervently, it was proven in a very conservative state that's against any type of different progression unless what it's been told to them.
We have the lowest alcohol drinking in the entire U.S. I saw a thing on that yesterday.
Crazy.
And I was like, but it goes into it. It's like, because we have really strict alcohol laws, which honestly, like, I get for people who drink, it can be obnoxious, but I don't drink as much anymore, and I don't.
But the thing is that those who consume a good amount of cannabis usually find themselves drifting away from alcohol.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't a state that thinks things are bad be able to do something that could actually promote less use of? And if you like a spirit, you like your beer, cool.
No judging. Yeah.
If you're driving around being stupid fuck, I care.
Yeah.
Are you beating anybody on this? Like, can you get upset on cannabis? Absolutely get cannabis. but you're not going to be like
You're way more level-headed.
way more. And you're going to think about, you're going to go back and fix what you said. Because sometimes you say stupid shit.
Yeah, way faster to go, hey, I really am sorry.
Instead of being drunk and doing something really stupid or saying something that you really can't take back. Maybe it was seated in your subconscious. Maybe you think about it, but you never talk about it.
But it's like, you will apologize. Like, it's interesting because you address it like way quicker versus like alcohol. It's like it never happened. You're just like, fuck it, and then you just.
Right. But
Yeah.
the idea that the perception from these individuals is not necessarily bad, is that they're trying to protect us in one way or another. And they're trying to make this decision from a parental idea of, well, that's bad for you. But it's the same thing like I told you about with What the Health, right? Where they're talking about eggs being just as carcinogenic as cigarettes. Like, what?
Bro, are you
One's
high?
a protein enriched with cholesterol
And when
that's
you're
good for your
actually
body.
burning and inhaling into your lungs. I'm not sure how those
And
two
it
things.
turns into other food that you already eat.
Yeah.
Like, what? This is a double food? This is awesome. This is a double
weird
Whopper.
where they got that correlation from.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's the same thing. I think it's this very weird perception that was it was propagated by an individual a long time ago. We have moved past that. I mean, you think about with even when you talk about social political things, everything from the environment to sexuality. Like, there's a lot of different perspectives. Are everyone right? No. Does everyone need to be right? No.
But we all feel we do.
Yeah, we all want to be right in one way or another, right? It needs to go based off of what we feel. And I don't agree with one individual who has an old perspective to continue to influence why I and you and everybody else who's listening don't get that right.
Yeah.
To just use it because it makes me feel better. And if that's the case, then cool. Change your mind. But I want to see more of them. Like, you know what? If you think it's so bad, you need to try it.
I think, and this is maybe just my observation from a lot of like the political things I've seen, is everything that I've watched is just, even in like Congress, even in the House, it's all argumentative. There's no like,
so argumentative.
There's no like
conversations.
Yeah, no discussion. No, like, hey, I just want to have a conversation with you so I can help you understand where I'm coming from. I want you to understand that this data and information, like, it's always from defensive, frustrated, like either hurt or angry or scared or whatever. Like, I feel like there's always this emotion around it instead of just like, I want to help you understand. That's it.
They should all have like a seltzer,
right?
Infused. So when you're able to, and you have the responsibility as a responsible cannabis user to be able to go, look, the perception of how cannabis is perceived is on me. It is on
If
me.
I'm giving this perception of a cannabis user, how am I coming off?
Yeah.
Like, how am I giving this light of cannabis? Well, I want this plant to be legalized. I want this to be approved. Well, if I'm showing up to you and I'm ignorant, I'm argumentative, I'm what? Well, what does that teach you that cannabis consumers are?
Yeah, that they're hard to deal with, and they're not. They're really not. It definitely lowers down a lot of these walls that are built up. You talk about racism, sexism, whatever, any ism. Literally, you're able to really get this out of the way where you can have hard discussions or difficult conversations with cannabis and actually navigate them a lot better. And even to the point where you're going off on a tangent, which we may not when we're really angry and we're not using. Because if I go off on a tangent, it's a high thought.
Usually.
And
yeah.
And it's disregarded. And we go, what was I talking about again? You're going to get rid of the bullshit. Like, if I'm really favorite and very passionate about something, I could talk for hours about it on cannabis.
Yeah.
High the entire time.
Oh, yeah. Because it's like so there. And yeah, you know so much about it.
But your brain, when you're using cannabis, it starts to get rid of that bullshit. So if anything, while you're listening to this podcast, and I know we're talking about legalization, but this is a very important part. It is our job as cannabis users to be able to change that perspective for others. If you're a good person, you're a loving individual, you're a good parent, you're great at your job, you're great at building businesses and serving other people. Like, if that's the case and you're doing that, be open about it.
Yeah.
We need more people being open about it.
Instead of hiding in their closet
Yeah,
about being a closeted cannabis consumer.
Because guess what? It's not 1930s anymore.
No.
That prick is not involved anymore.
Well, and you found value in it. So why are you hiding that from everyone else? Maybe it's friends, family members, coworkers. Like, if you own a company, who the hell cares? What is, like you said, it's not 1920s. Like, this is a way more progressive mindset. We have education at our fingertips. Technology is right here. Like, you can Google something and find answers in a second.
Yeah.
There's no necessary reason at this point to be ignorant. We can choose to educate ourselves. And if it's having that discussion or going like, hey, I just want to show you this, like, everything is right here.
Yeah, it's all very normal. It is an enhancer of your life. You know, the way that media has portrayed cannabis consumers is always stupid and ignorant. And it's funny because it was illegal, so it was taboo, so it was funny.
Oh, for sure. And those who used it thought it was funny because you can see the moments of like, oh, this is your brain on drugs, this is your brain on this. And you're like, no, but I remember the moment that I really got sunk in the couch and was like,
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it wasn't actually, I was fried or like couldn't function or like all these things that you're like, okay. You're like, no, it was just, I was really high.
Well, and even then, like, you know, you get rid of a lot of the bullshit in your head of who you are and what you should be.
Ego death.
Yeah.
Is huge on
cannabis, on continuous use. Ego death really is a thing. You eliminate your ego. So I know we've gone off on many tangents here, but it's all good convo because you got to think about you got to start having these conversations with other people. You need to start having these conversations with your family members. If they're having a hard time, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your friends, if you have a faith, your church, because some of them are not for it. Some of them are totally for it. They're like, yeah, go ahead. You do you. But at the same time, we need to keep it normal. It doesn't need to have barriers of political values, religious values, social values. It's all for everybody. And you wouldn't regulate somebody telling you can't have Hostess, right? I wouldn't tell you can't buy a Twinkie. It's your choice.
Okay, so, or that too, or even as a medicine. If they have medical value, who's 100%. Limiting you going, you can't go buy vitamin C, you can't buy B12, you can't go buy aspirin? Like, who is actually regulating that going, you can't do that? Why is there a restriction around that?
Yeah, I mean, even thinking about that, what you bring up, like, you know, would cannabis hurt their industry? I think a little bit, but, for an older generation, I don't think so.
I just think they would come into the industry. So then it's just, and this is what I always don't understand with those people who lobby on either side of that. There's room in the industry.
Yeah, totally.
There's room for new products because it's been illegal for 100 years, meaning that there's been, most of our crazy cool developments have been in the last 100 years. So you're looking at that going, okay, well, what crazy cool developments could cannabis bring if we actually open the doors? If we allowed all of the minds to work on it and look at it instead of going, oh no, we need to be scared.
How many medicines would be developed right now?
Yes. How many people could be helped? How many people would be helped? And then the quality of life of everyone
exponentially gets better.
Goes, higher. And so you're like, okay, not just that, but every person they interact with.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, well, it's the thing of like passing on good. When you pass on good, it keeps going. But if you're in a good mood because you're utilizing and your quality of life is better, well, you're always going to be passing on more good.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, so it just, I don't understand where it's been this like fear-based thing. When if you open the doors, like right now we've had even studies, we can't fully study cannabis in the US to its full basis because the regulations restrict it to like really minimal low amounts, which aren't actually sold on the market anymore.
They've probably done more medical tests openly on Coca-Cola than they've done on cannabis.
So the thing that I was reading, and this was actually kind of frustrating, and I don't remember which program it is, but they are actually, what they fund it for and the studies is they only study the negative aspects of cannabis. They don't actually study the positives, the medical benefits, any of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's really detrimental to claiming, like, to even finding out if it's a medicine, because you already have medical patents and all this stuff. So it is medicine, but you're not allowing the data to catch up in the places that you say it needs to happen.
Right.
So then open your doors for your scientists, at least, to allow them to study the products that are even being sold across the board in your own country.
Yeah.
Like, how are you supposed... It's basically going,
so
we're going to
ignorant.
test oranges to see what apples gives us.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, who
doesn't make
cares
any
what
sense.
apples gives you? You have oranges.
Yeah, it's the that's where
I don't understand it.
That's
I
why
truly don't.
that's why I think that, and that's why I keep going back on that. That's why I think it's just the perception. It's been seen as bad, and it will continue to be bad for that reason alone. Not for money, not for control. It's just like you said, like if it was in vitamins, like where we could give vitamins in certain things, how many products would be developed now if it wasn't illegal back then?
Supposedly over 50% of Americans want legalization of cannabis. So what do you think that breaking point percentage of American support that it needs to actually get the senators and the House and that to finally listen to all of the American citizens who have been asking for this, going, hey, we see this value. We have all of these states that have this medical value.
Yeah.
What is that percentage of people that it's finally like, okay, wait, we are supposed to actually be in seats supporting people. So at what point are we actually doing our agenda, someone else's agenda, and not listening to the people? Because right now, statistically, I feel like at that point, over 50% means that they're not listening.
No, they're not listening in it. And the other side too, again, fucking that horse is dead. Stop it, Jesse. But term limits. Term limits, because
100%.
If I don't even think it's not the money, dude. Like, why would you leave something where everybody, you get to a certain position, like I said about Orrin Hatch, he may have been a really good gentleman, and he may have been a really good dad or grandpa or whatever.
Maybe.
But as far as a lawmaker, he was detrimental to
the progression in that of Utah.
Absolutely. And there are many that will agree with me on that. But the thing is it was because of his perception and the reasons why it continued to be that way. Because he was in office for so long, decades. It's like we have Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been in politics for over 30 years. Like, it's insane.
Which is crazy because you think about it. That means he was in his 60s then?
Yeah.
Like, how was he functioning and thinking
even earlier than that, dude? Yeah. The guy's been in 40. I don't know how long. He's been in.
Long time.
Forever, dude. Forever. I mean, I could even say he's gone back into the 70s.
But 100%. Term limits. It has to be put in place.
Too long. If you're too long in there, you're not obsessed with what's right. You're obsessed with what I think.
Yeah.
And that's a bad thing.
Well, and if you're basing any of your decisions based on what you feel versus the data and all of your constituents underneath you and what they're asking, you're not doing what they're asking. You shouldn't be in that seat.
Even then, it's saying that, right? What's more powerful, what you know or what you feel? It's always what you feel. You will always side with what you feel. So one of the things in order for them to get there is being able to make it where the data helps them feel. And that's where I think if you want to be against cannabis, then you need to try cannabis, right? If heroin and cocaine are a Schedule II, then in cannabis is not, where you can reverse the effects almost immediately, even on onset.
Yeah.
You can't do that with the other ones. You have to introduce some hardcore fucking chemicals. Narcan is not a very nice drug. It's a potent drug to take you from near death.
Yeah.
It's basically adrenaline. And you're just shoving that in your nose and to be able to wake them up, because that's what's getting them up.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, you're willing to do that, but you're not willing to look at a plant that worst case scenario.
And we've had no deaths from.
None. Has there been things that have been related to it? Yeah. If you had heart problems and you introduced that one, you could have got that from drinking too much fucking coffee.
Or the Delta 8 derived ones. There have been, but there's no actual real cannabis-based death of they died from cannabis.
Right.
No.
It takes me back to junior high. I remember at Halloween, they had these tombstones and stuff, and one of them said, died of marijuana overdose. And this teacher, he was a hippie dude, he's like, that can't happen. And walked away, and we were just like, what? I was in 7th grade. It was funny as shit. But no, it is that. We gotta, if you're wanting to make this very harmless substance, I'm not gonna call it a drug anymore, harmless substance that we have plentifully on this planet, you want to make it illegal because you say it's bad for people. Yeah, so many people use it for good reasons. Then you need to try it. Try CBD.
And I want you to show me where you're pulling that data from. I would love to see where you're
100%.
pulling the information showing that it's bad and harmful.
Yeah, there are. I mean, we're not going to say there's not bad things to it. Putting flame to it is a carcinogen.
Yeah, you can get carcinogens, but like it's been proven, if you stop smoking joints or that, the long-term bronchial effects on your lungs goes away.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen with tobacco or
Nope.
anything else. So
Nope, it's not cancer forming.
Yep. So you're like, okay, cool.
Right.
So it depends on maybe your particular method of consumption for that.
And there are way more opportunities and products these days that grant you that one. So if you have the perception this is bad, I challenge you. I mean, I guarantee there's no congressman or senator, but maybe you are because you're hanging out, you're in the back, you're in the garage, you're lighting up, going, my favorite podcast.
We can hope. And if so, hit us up. We'd love to have you on the show. Have a chat.
Totally. If you're a politician and you're for it or you're against it, let's talk.
I think it would be an interesting combo. Yeah.
It would be an interesting convo. I would definitely have to be very medicated for that one. It's why we're doing what we're doing right now that makes a difference. The reason why is we're getting more people to be able to be open and talk about it. And that's so awesome. Even those who message us saying, I don't use cannabis anymore, but I love listening to your show. Like,
it's true.
That's cool.
It's huge because it's like it shows the impact of what it truly is doing. And how many people are those people having conversations with, educating them? Because it's maybe you know a ton about cannabis. Maybe you know everything we've told you. Maybe there's one thing that you didn't. And maybe that one thing is something you can share with someone else.
Yeah. So do so. Like and comment down below. Fill out like, the little comment section we have on Spotify. We love listening to your comments and stuff. It's awesome. Drop us a voicemail. We've got a lot of those too. Those ones are fun.
And you can always actually even support the show directly on Spotify. There's a link right below and you can donate right through there. Or for all our Patreon supporters, we love you guys.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome with you guys helping us get to this stage. So,
yeah. So until next time.